Welcome to Sonia Podcast. Melissa, I'm so sorry. I came across the two you giving me, trauma bonding and gaslighting. I was looking through my email and I happened to come across it, and I also had put it in my notes. Thank you so much. So right now I'm going to talk about trauma bonding. What is trauma bonding? Is one of those psychological concepts such as attached style and gaslighting that has made its way into public consciousness and have subsequently become misused through casual conversation. Trauma bonding is an important thing to understand and use correctly. You get to know the common misconception, the true meaning of trauma bonding, and what trauma bonding looks like, and how to get out of a trauma bond relationship. This is a fun, lighthearted conversation, but it is a necessary one. So even if you aren't in a trauma bonding relationship, understanding the sign and language could potentially help you and someone who you love. And it also can help you to learn why people respond or act the way they do. And it also can make you more empathetic and helpers to other people needs and wants. So what is trauma bonding exactly? It's often misunderstood as a bond between two or more people who experience the same traumatic event, but that isn't what trauma bonding is. Trauma bonding is a psychological response to abuse where the abused person forms an unhealthy bond to their abuser. Example, y'all heard of Stockholm Syndrome. So what Stockholm Syndrome is when a captive tends to form sympathy or affection for their abuser, which hinder them from seeing the severity of the situation, like the badness of the situation. Now, trauma bonding doesn't have a distant timeline and can develop over days, weeks, months, or even years. So it's important to mention not to everyone who experiences abuse will develop a trauma bond. But everyone with a trauma bond has experienced some sort of abuse. Trauma bonding and Stockholm Syndrome may begin when an abused person begins to rationalize their perpetrator's action. Now, it's important that when talking about abuse, that any and all kinds of abuse, physical, mental, or emotional, there will be combinations of multiple types of abuse involving in trauma bonding. Along with feeling sympathy, it's very common for an abused person to have feelings of attachment and dependence toward their abuser, which tends to lead to continued patterns of abuse and sense of responsibility for the action of their abusers. Now, trauma bonding is extreme and healthy attachment formed between two people. Sometimes these two people can be parents, guardians. That's when one person is doing the abuse and the other person is being abused. It's a short time, it's vicious, it's a confusing cycle to be in, and can feel like I curse anyway sometimes. A mind fuck for people, who is being abused. So, the attachment caused the person to distrust their own judgment, to distort their own realities so much that they rationalize themselves or make it at more risk. Now, how does trauma bonding happen? Your brain is always trying to protect you, even if it means tricking you into feeling safe in an unsafe situation as means for survival. Trauma bonding as dysfunctional attachment that occurs in the presence of danger, shame, or exploitation, and considered as one of 9 possible reactions to a traumatic situation. When people are profoundly frightened, trauma creates a biological alternative of the brain. Trauma bonding causes, and when this fear goes away, so do all the neurochemical associated with it. Then the person experiences cravings. They can become attached to trauma. In the event of long-lasting trauma, the person actually become accustomed to it. Now, in a relationship, there's trauma bonding. It's likely that the person being abused keep themselves small or feel safe. They appease, are obedient, and remain in relationship because they have deemed it a normal relationship. For example, children form attached to their caregivers because they need someone to depend on to survive, while adults form attachment to other people who provide them comfort and support. Suppose a child caregiver growing up was abusive. In that case, because of trauma bonding, the child will likely associate love with abuse, resulting in romantic relationships later that mirror the caregiver relationship of their upbringing. Because of this, it's hard for the person who grew up abused to see their caregiver or partner as bad because this is the only form of love they know. This sort of trauma bonding also generally causes the child to take the blame for the way they are being treated. Their sense of self is never fully developed because the love they receive from their caregiver or partner most likely has to be earned or only happens after they were abused. This vicious cycle causes the abuser to feel that their caregiver or partner is actually good, but they are the reason for the abuser's action. It is also common that after causing harm, an abusive person may promise to change or to make up for their behavior. Now we know that that's most of the time that's not going to happen. They're just not going to change. Sometimes be portrayed in lavish gift giving, romantic gestures, or other intense attention that makes the abused person feel loved. This behavior gives the person being abused hope that someday their relationship will look like this forever. And it's that hope that reinforces the trauma bonding, especially when the person has become accustomed to poor treatment. What can trauma bonding look like? There are many different kinds of potential trauma abuse relationships, such as domestic abuse, child abuse, incest, kidnapping, exploitative employment, cults, codependent relationships. Trauma bonding is at play and someone has bond with their abusers. They will likely try to justify or defend abuse. This could manifest in various ways, including trying to cover up for the abusive person, distancing themselves from people in their lives who are trying to help them, making excuses for their abuse as to why they are being abused, feeling reluctant to take steps that get them out of the relationship and situation, agrees with the abused person for treating them poorly. Oh, they didn't mean to hurt me. They was just having a bad day. It really is my fault. I know I made them angry. Oh, they only respond like this because they truly love me. You wouldn't understand. Oh, right now, it's just so stressed. You wouldn't understand. It'll get better later. Y'all know we done said this. I know I have said this. So I know, other abused women or abused people have said this. It is important that even if someone is about to leave a relationship where there's trauma bonding, these feelings are protecting them. Abusers don't just go away. Likely the person who was abused will still feel a powerful sense of loyalty to their abuser and feel tempted to return at times. This may confuse from an outsider perspective, but this is where it's essential to be empathetic and gentle. If someone have experienced trauma bonding in their relationship, it's likely that their trauma has begun to feel safe. Even though it obviously isn't, someone who has been abused starts to believe that this is what true love looks like. And healthy love can feel overwhelming, off-putting, or scary. Now, how do you leave a relationship that is trauma bonding? Leaving a trauma bond relationship can now only feel scary for the person who was being abused, but it can also be truly unsafe for them to go. Leaving certain abusive situations can take a lot of careful planning, so when the person leaves, they are set up for a successful escape and have the tools available that they need. Now, people fleeing abusive relationship or relationships that involve trauma bonding might need help financially with housing, to find work, or some type of income to make plans for leaving and staying safe after leaving, or even with compiling a list of names and contact details of safe people they can approach for help. Once the person have found safety, it's imperative that they start psychotherapy of any kind. Even consider joining a support group for survivors in domestic violence or other type of abuse. Trauma that impacts someone's mental well-being can feel like untangling a balls of yarn. It's messy. Very messy. It doesn't make much sense. It's frustrating. Can be unraveled without support. Most of the time, recovering from abuse are under the impression that they are always the problem. This means that they need more reassurance and guidance to safely cope with the trauma they experience. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship or maybe experienced trauma bonding, please learn about it. Reach out to a therapist. Reach not to any therapist. Let me clarify this. Don't reach out to any therapist, because sometimes you get therapists, and I'm telling you this from experience. You go in therapy, you get a therapist, and they do not understand what you're talking about, because I guess they have never been through it, or they just throw the therapist in there because the therapist have a license, and the therapist is looking at you. You can see the sorrow look in their eyes, or you can see some of them that's really don't care and just, I'm here for a check. So when you go to get a therapist and you're in this type of relation and you're in this type of trauma, get someone who specializes in helping folks with abusive relationships of all kinds. That's the type of therapist you're going to need. Not any type of therapist, but that type of therapist. Now, you should leave a trauma bond relationship once you create a safety plan. Your safety plan you have to have support. You need all kinds of support where you can feel safe. Someone has to be there who can support you. There's also a lot of hotlines available that's 24/7 over the phone. Y'all know the National Domestic Violence Support Hotline. And always remember, you are not alone. You are not alone at all. And it can make you, any abuse can make you feel like you are, but you're not. You'll be surprised how many people have gone through what you went through, or that's going through what you went through. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to get help. It took me years to get help. It took me years of counseling before I can actually get myself where I needed to be. So yes, get help. And I got part of where I need to be, but I might need more to go back and find, because like I said, it's not easy. It's never going to be easy for anyone. It's never going to be easy when you don't went through so much trauma in your life. It's just not. It feel okay for a long time, but then there's certain triggers that triggers it back. So you might have to go back into counseling, because I'm not gonna lie, I might have to go back into counseling. But there's something that you can be helped. You can be helped, and as long as you have a great support system, that's a blessing. So make sure you have a great support system. And I thank you for listening to Sonia Podcast. Please give it a 5-star review on Spotify, Speakers, iHeartRadio. Wherever this podcast at, please share. Please go to my website, http://podcasters.com/wordpress.com, www.avilo. Use promo code Sonia, www.instacart156. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can buy me a coffee. You can also follow me at son.ia9795 Instagram, Sonia Santiago Twitter, Sonia Santiago YouTube, Sonia Santiago Pinterest. And Check out my son's Sounds album on Spotify, Apple. Thank you and have a great night.